Good evening and welcome back. I am James Maupin, and this is my weekly podcast. We are in week 3. If you are new, I will let you know of what this podcast is and what the objective of it is. In this podcast, I cover how reaching your goals in the gym is the same as reaching your goals as a musician. So to elaborate on that a little bit more, explain how the principle for reaching success in the gym is similar to this principle for reaching success as a musician. So, in this podcast, I am joined by a special guest. She is a former football player, and she is here to talk about sports and music.
Hello, my name is Mudiwa Williams. As a composer, I go by Mudiwa Williams. I don't really care what you call me for this podcast. I just kind of, I thought that the concept of your podcast was really interesting, and
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Throughout the my time here at Adams State, I found a lot of parallels between preparing for like a football game or going to practice as I do walking into a practice room or going into rehearsals. So I kind of wanted to just bring awareness to those parallels and see how athleticism and musicianship are not that far apart.
All right. Before we get into that, can I have you talk a little bit about your football history?
Sure. I played community flag football in middle school, and then I played football at my high school for all 4 years. I was an offensive guard and a defensive end, so I was on the line, and I played for varsity and for JV, basically all 4 years. Our team was very small, so it wasn't that good, but I did go to all the practices. I went to the summer conditioning and lifting, and I was fully committed to the football program.
That's amazing. Can I have you talk about the principle that made you a better football player?
Sure, yeah. Being a clarinetist, I am a clarinetist, and trying to perfect my craft as a musician, and I got into more composing and things like that. There's so many things that just come down to muscle memory, which you gain through practice over time. None of this stuff happens overnight. You don't become a great football player overnight, and you don't become a great clarinetist overnight. So being in the practice room every day and working on the fundamental things like scales and like etudes and things like that, parallel to going into football practice and going through the drills and, warming up the same way and doing the stretches the same way and hitting your blocks the same way. It all comes down to muscle memory that you get over time.
Can you talk about how you set your goals for being a musician and a football player and how you were able to use learning principles to reach them?
Yeah. So as a football player, my goals, the team goals were always to prepare for, the next game and try to win. And that always meant being faster than your opponent or stronger than your opponent or just thinking further ahead than your opponent. So setting micro goals for myself as a football player, make sure that I step off the right way and I put my hands in the same place and things like that were the micro goals that I set for myself in the practice room, like getting this measure right or getting the style right and things like that. To me, they seem like the same thing. If I want to achieve this block properly, I have to think about the form. I have to think about the muscles that I'm using and the target that I'm striking. And on the other hand, as a musician, I have to think about the style, the composer, the era, and things like that to make sure that I, do the piece justice as I play it. So setting micro goals, like I'm going to make sure that this is a Baroque piece, so I'm playing it light and lifted in the way a Baroque piece would sound. In the same way that I'm going to get this block, so I make sure my hands are here and my feet are here, and I'm using my hips in like an engaging way and things like that.
Okay. So one of the most common topics for musicians as well as athletes is their ability to use teamwork. Per se, when you're a musician, you're always collaborating with other musicians when it comes to performances, when it comes to practicing, when it comes to rehearsing. And the same thing applies when you're in football. You're going over drills, you're practice tackling, you're practicing for your next game. How do you feel specifically that the way you use teamwork for a musician is the same as using teamwork as a football player?
Well, we all have the same goals. As a football player, our goal as a team is to win the game. And as a musician, our goal is to play the piece or to collaborate and come up with this new inventive way to kind of interact with the music. And so, always thinking about, there's no I in team. So, always thinking about what the other person's, worry about yourself in terms of the individuality of the team, but also keep in mind that what you bring to the table is unique and that you can't have what you're putting together without you, and the same goes for everybody else. So on the football team, there's 11 people on the field that are playing for your side, offense or defense, and missing one person is like literally a penalty. Mm-hmm. So every person is important to the play. If this person doesn't get the block off right, the play is ruined. The same way, if this person misses their solo or their cue in a performance, then not the song's ruined or whatever, but that goal is kind of not achieved.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that everybody is criticized for is self-repair and self-work. A lot of people will assume it's selfish if you are working in a team and you choose to do self-work. As an example, when you're a musician and you're in whatever jazz band or orchestra or whatever ensemble you are a part of, and you have a some sort of a big deal coming up, you have a performance, you have a gig, any sort of thing like that, and you feel that you're not prepared for it, it is very common for yourself to go and practice and work on your own part of your contribution by yourself. A lot of people will call it selfish because you will walk away from the group to work on it yourself. And the same goes for football. So one example I like to think of is old friend Dimitri, who I played football with in high school, how he would often go and lift by himself, and he would often practice his own agility techniques by himself so that he could overall choose his performance or increase his specific performance for the game under his control. So he would never work as a team when it came to self-improvement. The question I have for you is, where do you feel like it is a good boundary of when you need to work on yourself and when you need to work as a team?
I think working by yourself in a way is working for the team. Like I said before, there's no I in team, but every I that's in the team is important and has their own unique, thing or whatever that they bring to the table, either as a football player or as a musician. So if you feel like you're lagging behind in either strength or in technique or in understanding the piece or the plays or anything like that, anything that you feel like you're behind on, you're dragging the team down. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and that goes for musicianship and for football. So if you feel like you're lagging behind, then working on yourself is working for the team. If you're going past that and you're like, you're doing your part for the team, but you're still, you're going off and doing your own thing just because of ego's sake. When ego gets involved, I think that's when it becomes a selfish thing and not a team thing. But if you're working on yourself to better the team, then I don't think that's selfish.
I was going to say, a lot of people misconceptualize these days about how important like your individual work is. Like obviously if you have a major performance with a big group coming up within a few weeks and you feel very under practice, it is very common for musicians to not show up for rehearsal, but to rather go and practice on their own time for themselves. Do you believe that while everybody else is rehearsing but you're off learning your own part, would you believe that that is a selfish thing?
I think it depends, but in a general sense, yes. If it's a rehearsal and you're not showing up for a rehearsal, you're letting everybody else down by not being able to hear or conceptualize your part without you being there. And there's things that happens in rehearsal that don't have anything to do with your part, like understanding style or figuring out how long this fermata is going to be or how slow this ritardando is going to happen. And things like that within the music that doesn't have anything to do with you, and you missing out on information that the entire ensemble needs to know so that you can work on individual stuff is selfish and is also getting in the way of the final product.
Understood. So the last thing before I end today's podcast is, do you think that whenever a team goal is set, no matter what, individualized work will be required. Like in terms, if you have a performance coming up within the next few weeks, do you think it is absolutely necessary for you to practice and perfectionize your part, even if the rest of the group is not on your level of commitment or is not as serious or dedicated about the goal as you are?
I think, yes, for your own sake. If you care more about the piece than the other people do, then that might be a group of people that you need to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But I never think that stooping down to other people's level is a thing that you should do for the final product. If you, kind of carry the ensemble or carry the team, that's on the rest of the team to bring it up, not on you to bring yourself back down.
Mm-hmm. So leading as an example.
Yes.
Understood. Well, thank you very much, Idea, for joining me this evening. This is going to wrap up today's podcast. I'm James.
I'm Haidia.
Have a good day.